Hello and welcome to the FormFusion Advanced training. My name is Chris and I'll be leading this training today. The intended audience for today's training are users that have experience working with FormFusion. If you have not taken the FormFusion Introductory training, I would recommend that you watch that training first. For today's training, the goal is to demonstrate more advanced functionality of FormFusion. We will cover the following objectives: an overview of the advanced functionality and template creation in FormFusion, the advanced components available in FormFusion, the advanced features in those components, and the use of an external application with FormFusion. First, we will start with the advanced functionality of FormFusion. As discussed in the introductory training, there are more advanced steps to a template creation process. We will be adding to the concepts covered in that training. First, we will look at another component that can be created in the print parameter called capture form. The capture form component allows for the execution of SQL queries to get data from an outside source. It is the basis of all conditional printing, which we will discuss later in the training. In map form, we can use a header to map information that changes dynamically from page to page. Map form can also use a non-standard input file as a source. In the form stamp, we can utilize capture form variables to conditionally print an object or form. In form director, we have three additional optional directors: email, imaging, and script. These directors can be used with capture form to conditionally print a job, or to distribute the final forms to multiple processing systems. Now we'll cover the advanced components in more detail. FormFusion has an advanced component called capture form. Using capture form, you can write SQL queries to pull information from your source database. It can be used to set up conditional variables that are used to determine whether an object or a form will print. Let's go into FormFusion to take a closer look. And for those of you who prefer Google Chrome, Google has disabled NP API support in September of 2015, and it is no longer possible to use Java to launch maps and the associated applications from Chrome. In order to better support our users who prefer Google Chrome, eVisions added the option to launch the applications without Java using the eVisions application launcher in Maps 4.5. For more information, please refer to the Maps 4.5 release guide or open a help desk ticket if you have any questions. Capture form contains the SQL variables in variable storage and queries identified by execution flags. We will discuss variable storage first. Here we have a list of all the capture form variables. Each variable in variable storage is storing information returned by an SQL query. To create a new variable storage, we click New. Here we name and set the parameters for the variable. The estimated width and height are only guidelines, and the data type can be adjusted to accommodate the data returned by the query. You can add multiple variables before clicking Save. For now, I'm just going to click Cancel. Notice that we have 4 different colors in our SQL flags. Each color denotes a different action. Here we have the legend of the execution flags. Under the Executes section, we have a description of what each execution option will accomplish. Pre will run before any pages have been processed. This is useful if you have information you are pulling from the database, and the same value is going to be used for every page of your output. page runs before each page of the input file. This is the option most of your queries will be set to because we want to return data that is specific to each page. Post runs after all pages have been processed. This is useful if you want to run a query only one time after processing the last page. And test will not run at all. You can choose this option if you do not want to execute the query during testing. Below we also have the options. For during sort, this query should be executed. This option is required if the query needs to run to populate the sorting values, and terminate processing on error. If this option is checked, job processing will fail if the query errors out. By default, FormFusion will ignore query errors and move on to the rest of the job processing. The connection override will override the default connection for your environment. If the section is left as none, the default connection will be used. Under SQL script is the script that will be executed when the query is called. This query is selecting Spriden PIDM into the PIDM variable from the Spriden table, where our Spriden ID is equal to our Vend ID, and the Spriden change indicator is not null. Notice that the word PIDM and Vend ID have a colon in front of them. The colon identifies a FormFusion variable. In the case of PIDM, it is the variable in variable storage where we're storing our information. And in the case of Vend ID, we are getting information from the map form. Let's look at a slightly more advanced query. This is a more complex query that selects multiple values into multiple variables and uses metadata and the decode statement. For the purposes of our training, I am not going to get into SQL queries beyond what I've just covered. Let's click the test button to test this query. A test confirmation window appears, informing us that the statement we run will be rolled back if possible, and to confirm we want to test. This window is asking me to give a value for the PO number. We have returned 5 rows of the FOPL information. If this variable was added to the form, it would print 5 rows to the PO variable for the purchase order. Clicking OK accepts the result of the test and prompts the Set Sample Data dialog window. I'm going to click No. Please note the query test is a great way to identify and resolve any syntax issues. If the syntax is correct, it will always return correct values during the query test. This is because you're entering a test value that you know will return results for your database. Next, we will look at the optional directors that are available in FormFusion. FormFusion has 4 directors available for distributing output: Imaging Director, Print Director, Email Director, and Script Director. Let's go into FormFusion to view these directors. These options provide the user with complete control over the distribution of the completed form in FormFusion. The Email Director enables you to distribute your output via email. The Imaging Director can be used with Banner Document Management, which is an imaging system where copies of your output can be parsed and saved to individual files for storage on the server. If your application has a self-service module, this feature could direct output to it. Next we have the Print Director, which, if you'll remember, is the only director set to execute by default. And lastly we have the Script Director, A script allows you to perform any task that can be done with PLSQL. I will be going into more detail about setting up directors later in the training. For now, I'm going to move on to discuss map form headers. Headers are typically used for an input file that has varying amounts of information that change dynamically from page to page. With a header, we can set up floating fields to map the variables that change in size and position. A scheduled bill is a good example of this. A student may take one class, or they may take multiple classes. We need to be able to map any number of classes that can appear on the scheduled bill. Here we have a scheduled bill that currently does not have a header. On the first page, all the classes and fees are mapped correctly. Notice that on the second page, all our variables are not mapping correctly. We are mapping too many space characters for the class section and not mapping all of the charges and credits. On the third page, we have a similar issue. Our floating fields are all in the same location, but they are not mapping correctly because the amount of data has changed. To correct this issue, we can use a header. The header icon looks like the box with two tabs on it. We can set a fixed header, or we can use the search text to create the header. We want this header to adjust with the amount of information in the input file, so I will select the search text radio button. The search text header is similar to how an offset field functions. It will search for text between two columns. We know that charges is going to be at the bottom of the information that we'll be changing, so I will use that for my search text. I will enter charges into the search text box. This search text is not going to be case sensitive. And next I will change the start and stop columns. And click OK. Notice the header appears as a pink box that expands down to the word charges. As a result of adding this header, my floating fields have all moved down, and I will need to move them back into the header. First I'll move term description up to summer 2004. Move up the rest of my floating fields. And move on to my next page. On page 2, notice that the fields are still not adjusting to the amount of information. To correct this, I need to configure the floating field resize properties. In the properties for the object, click resizing. And I want this to resize the field when the parent size changes. The field will now adjust to the amount of information. Do the same for my other floating fields. The total credit floating field doesn't change in size because the input file uses one row to display total credits. This field only moves with the scheduled data. I will change this to move the field when the parent size changes. Now we will confirm all pages are mapping correctly. The template is now correctly configured and adjusts the amount of information on each page. Next, we will discuss the use of non-standard input files with FormFusion. At times, we may need to create a polished document using FormFusion without a standard export from our enterprise application. Let's say we have to use a comma-delimited file to format the output. Let's take a look at a sample comma-delimited file. So note that each record is on a separate line and the commas are separating the information. If I import this file into FormFusion, this is what it looks like. On the first page, it shows the first line of the comma delimited file. These are the file headers, or the field headers. And notice that each page in MapForm is a line from the comma delimited. FormFusion uses the commas to separate each field into a new line. The setup is the main difference between a standard file and a comma delimited file. To change the setup, you would go into the MapForm properties. In the input file section, we have input data format, and notice it is currently set to comma delimited. By changing the input file to standard input, notice FormFusion is no longer creating separate pages excuse me, or breaking lines on the commas. Let's change this back. Other than the input data format, all the other components are set up in the same fashion as the standard input file. When setting up MapForm with a comma delimited file, the first page with the file headers should be used to create the fields, and the remaining pages to define the field size. Here we have our output. Notice that we have the header names on the first page. This would be a good situation to use special processing to not print the first page of the input file. Are there any questions about the use of non-standard input files? The next topic we're going to cover is the use of capture form to conditionally print a document. Conditional printing will use a combination of components, the capture form and one other component. Conditional printing can be applied at three different levels: the object level, the form level, or the job level. At the object level, we can set an object to only print when a specific condition is met, and any number of objects in a form stamp can be set to print conditionally. At the form level, we can set a form to only print when a condition is met, and at the job level, we can control if a job will be printed at all based on a condition. Please note that you cannot have more than one condition per object, form, or job, and FormFusion is only checking to see if the conditional variable is met or not. If the variable is null, the object, form, or job will not print. If the object is, or if it is not null, the object, form, or job will print. First, we will discuss conditional printing at the object level. A perfect example of this would be a signature. For this sample template, every PO requires a signature, but not all POs require review by a manager. We can set up a signature image that will only print when a PO is below a specific dollar amount, in this case 200. First, we will create a variable to store the value in variable storage. Notice that we have already created a variable called print signature. This is a variable that will be used in the SQL statement. In the print signature SQL script, we have a script that will set the value true to the variable print signature when the PO total is less than 200. To verify this statement is working correctly, we can test it. And enter a value of 150. The result window shows the print signature evaluated as true. We will not save the data, but let's test it again for a PO total over 200. Enter 250. This test did not return any rows, thus the print signature variable will be null. Now we will apply this to the signature in our form stamp. Here we select the signature. Notice we default to the image section. I want to go to the general section. And in the general section, we see that the conditional is set to always print. This means currently this graphic would print on every PO. We will drop down and select the print signature variable. Now the signature will only print POs that are under 200. After selecting the conditional variable, you'll see a small F icon on the object. This lets us know the object is printing conditionally. Next we will talk about form level conditional logic. There are two examples that I want to show you. The first is the print on new page option, which is a new feature that was added in FormFusion 3.4. FormFusion has always output the same number of pages as the input file. With the addition of this feature, you can insert additional pages to the output. This feature is useful when you want to add information like the terms and conditions as a separate page, or if you wish to include some forms with an admission letter. We're going to take a look at a purchase order for our training. To enable the print on new page option, open the terms and conditions form stamp, right click on the form and choose form properties. Select the overlay section, and here you see the print on new page checkbox under the new page options. If we check this box and leave the conditional to always print, the term and condition information will print on a new page after every page in the batch. Now there may be multiple page purchase orders in the job, so it would be a waste of resources to print the terms and conditions after each page. Taking multiple page purchase orders into consideration, we can identify some information that is unique to the last page or the first page of the purchase order. Once we set up the form with a conditional printing, the term and condition would only print when that condition was met. We know that the discount information always prints at the end of the purchase order. So here's a capture form query that sets the conditional variable based on whether the discount information exists on a page or not. Next we go into the terms and conditions form stamp. Set the form property to print the terms and conditions based on the new page condition. Since we're setting up conditional printing with the print on new page option, we also have to check the remove conditional blank page option in print director. Now the terms and conditions will print on a new page and only once for every purchase order in the job. For more information or assistance with the print on new page feature, please refer to the documentation on our website. The second example of a form-level conditional logic is a case where each page of the input file needs to have a completely different look and feel. A student enrollment verification letter will print two different forms to create one finished document. The form that prints will be determined by a value in the input file. First, let's look at the map form and see how it's been set up. In map form, we have one floating field that covers the entire page. Page 1 has student information at the top, and the bottom of the page is where the enrollment verification information begins. Page 2 is simply a continuation of the enrollment history. In this situation, we need two completely different forms because the input file changes dramatically from one page to another. As discussed in the introductory training, we are going to use an offset field to identify the page number because it will not appear in the same location on each page. On the first page, we are storing 1 into the page number variable, and we can use this to control our output conditionally. Now we will look at the forms to see the difference. Notice we have text at the top and the enrollment detail block below. On page 2, nothing is being displayed. The reason for this is in the properties of the form stamp. We go to the overlay section. Notice we have print on copy set to 1, and the conditional print is set to print header form. This means the form will only print when the print header form variable is not null. Let's take a look at the no header form. Notice in this form stamp we only have the letterhead on the page block. Let's look at the properties and the overlay section. Here we have the print on copy set to 1 as well, but notice that we have the conditional set to print excuse me, the conditional set to print on print no header form. This means that this form stamp will not print unless the print no header form variable is not null. Each of these conditional variables are set up in capture form. Similar to the object level, SQL variables and queries are used to control the output of the form. Let's take a look at the SQL statements that have been used. Here we have the print header form query. Notice the SQL is similar to the object level script. The print header form variable is populated with the text true when the page number is less than or equal to 1. Let's test the statement. Enter 1 for the page number and click OK. The print header form evaluates as true, as it should have. Let's test it again. This time we will test for null, because we know that the second page has no page number. This time the print header form evaluated to null, because nothing was processed. This means that the header form stamp will print on just the first page. Let's take a look at print no header form. In this SQL script, true will be placed into the print no header form variable when the page number is greater than 1 or is null. Let's also test this statement. Enter 1 and click OK. The print no header form evaluates null because nothing was processed. Now I'll test it again. This time I'll test for null because I know the second page has no number. This time the print no header form evaluates true. This essentially means that the header form stamp will only print on the first page and all subsequent pages will use the no header form stamp. The last level conditional logic we're going to discuss is the job level. A good example of job level conditional would be a student bill. We only want to print bills that have a total greater than 0. Here we will set the job to print based on the amount of the bill. Notice that our first student has a total due of $4,065. On the second page, we can see that the student has 0 balance. Let's go into our go into our SQL query in capture form. Notice the SQL script here is similar to object and form level scripts because it is also a typical true-false statement. In this statement, true will be placed into total owed when the total due is greater than 0. Let's give this a test. Enter 4065 and click OK. The total owed value is true because it was over 0. Let's test again. This time we'll give it a 0 value because we know page 2 has no total due. Total due evaluates to null because no rows were processed. Now that we know our SQL is working, let's go into Form Director and make it print conditionally. Notice under Execute this director, we have Conditional with a drop-down. Total owed has already been selected. This means that the student bill will only print for students that have a balance due. Okay, so next we're going to discuss multiple directors. To demonstrate the use of multiple directors and systems, we will establish some requirements. We are sending our students their bills, and we want to make certain that they receive them. In an effort to be greener, we will attempt to email our student bills, and only mail the student bills if there is a problem emailing. The student bills will only be mailed if there is a balance on the account, and the bills will also be available on the student portal regardless of the balance. Additionally, we need to keep copies of the bills for our records. On the second copy, we will print a hard copy as well and send an electronic copy to our imaging system. First, we will want to select the specific printer that we will be printing our bills to. We want our printout to be in colour, so we'll have that box checked. Next, we want to set up the director to only print if email does not execute. Now that that's set up, let's set up email director. We need to activate the email. Notice that the conditional is set to execute when total owed variable returns true, just like print director. Below that, we can select our email server and enter all of our information. This has been filled in for me. Notice that the student email, the student name, and the due date have a colon before them. This is because they are using variables and give the email a more personal touch. we've also included a web address. One thing to be aware of when adding a web address is in FormFusion, the colon is going to indicate that a variable will follow. We will need to dereference this colon so it will print literally, and we do that by adding a backslash before it. Next we will set up the script that will send this bill to the portal. We want the bill to be sent to the portal regardless of the total owned, so the conditional will be left as always process. We would enter the script below. Script director creates FormFusion output as a PDF and saves it to the network or local drive or to your database. Note that we save it as a PDF to make it easier for the students to read. Now we're going to set up copy 2. Here we will set the printer that we want to print our hard copies to. Again, we want this to print regardless of the amount, so the condition will be left to always print. I'll also deselect the colour checkbox because I won't need that. Lastly, I'm going to set up my imaging system. In the imaging system, we will parse and save our output to individual files for storage in the server. Note we can save as a PDF, making it easier to view if necessary. Next, I'll select the path to generate the PDF. This path could be for a directory in Windows on the map server, or a path on the banner server. We want the PDF to go into a temp directory in the C drive, so I'll choose path as in Windows. Next, we'll write the path to go to the C drive temp in our copied generated file too. Notice how I have 2 backslashes instead of 1. This is due to the backslash character being used for dereferencing, as we saw earlier in the email address. Therefore, we need to use 2 so that the backslash can be read as a character by dereferencing itself. Lastly, we need to give the PDF we are creating a name and a file extension. For the name, I'm going to be using the process system variable, so the file contains the name of the process. For those unfamiliar with system variables, they are global reserved variables that may contain data about the process, the input file, or information passed from the banner server, and they cannot be overwritten. I will also put in my extension, .pdf. To prevent the file being overwritten, it is a good idea to also append another variable, which will be populated with a value unique to each record in the input file. Our form director is now set up to distribute our forms to the appropriate systems. Let's talk about another feature we can use to save resources. When you have a large volume of outgoing mail, you can use the USPS Intelligent Mail barcode and save on postage. FormFusion 3.3 and above supports the Intelligent Mail barcode, which can be made of 20 to 31 digits, as specified by the US Postal Service. The barcode can contain information identifying the sender, the mail class, and the destination zip code. There are 4 steps to implementing an Intelligent Mail barcode. You would download the barcode font from our website, and then install it on the map server, and also to the machine where the template will be updated. You would map or create the numeric string to be encoded. You would add the variable containing the numeric string to the form stamp and apply the Intelligent Mail barcode font, and you would set the encoding option. We will not be covering how to add a new font for the purposes of this training. We will focus on how to create the numeric string to be encoded and how to apply the barcode font. Assuming the barcode font was added to the appropriate machine, you can map the zip code in map form. Here we see the zip code is already being mapped for this template. The rest of the information you need for the barcode may or may not be in your input file. For our training, I'm going to use a capture form query to generate the rest of the number string. This query stores a number string that is 21 characters long to a variable called barcode. Next, we would add the barcode variable to our form stamp. This has already been done for us, as we can see. And the last thing we would do is set the barcode encoding in the barcode section here in the data field. This is a preview of the barcode, and even though you're only seeing numbers, you would see the USPS intelligent barcode when you print the output. For more details, you can download the Intelligent Mail barcode documentation on our website. It walks you through the implementation and covers some basic troubleshooting. The last topic I'm going to discuss is the use of an external application. An example of this is running FormFusion from the command line. If we need to rerun a job that has been processed in an enterprise application, we can rerun the job from command line. We have sample scripts for Unix and Windows on the Vision support website. Here is a sample script that would work with Unix and Oracle. Here we would fill in our information, such as the input file name, process name, special print parameter, and the printer that would be used to rerun the job. This method of printing is great for testing, where you may not want to run the job through your ERP system. You can just take an existing input file from a job that has already ran and reprint the job over and over. It's also helpful if the print job failed due to issues like a printer jam or a power outage. You could determine the pages in the input file that have not been printed, make a copy of the input file with only the pages that need to be reprinted, and run the job from the command line. We've come to the end of today's training. If anyone would like any additional information on anything we've covered or has any questions, please feel free to submit a help desk ticket, and one of our FormFusion analysts will be happy to assist you. Thank you for attending, everyone, and have a great day.